Today, we are putting the muscles in Magic the Gathering because we are going to talk about the beefiest, the baddest, the strongest group of kinfolk in Magic the Gathering history, the Eldrazi. Today, we're going to go over one of my favorite Eldrazi decks. It's my colored Eldrazi deck, all right? It's a 5-color deck. We're going to talk about the commander. We're going to talk about the cards I used. We're going to talk about some of the strategies and the synergies and combos in this deck that will absolutely blow your mind. And we're going to have a lot of fun looking at my personal collection. You are watching Muscles and Magic the Gathering. I'm Bobby Maximus. I am the Muscles. These cards, they're Magic the Gathering, something that's been a passion of mine for over 30 years now. And these are real cards that I own. I don't do the graphics on the screen. I don't do proxies. These are real cards that are part of my personal collection. And my goal with these videos is, one, to show you better ways to build your decks, but two, to share my collection and the joy that I get from Magic the Gathering. So with all that said, intro is over. Let's get down to business because you can't wait to learn about Eldrazi. My commander today is Ulalek Fused Atrocity, and this came out with the Modern Horizons 3 set. It's a 5-color commander. It's got Devoid. It's a 2/5, and whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 colorless mana. If you do, copy all spells you control, then copy all activated and triggered abilities you control. You may choose new copies or new targets for the copies. Mana abilities can't be copied. So this card is an absolute killer. You get this out, this is a game ender. This is one of those what I call kill on sight commanders. All right. So we built around Ulalek. And one of the reasons I wanted to build a 5-color Eldrazi commander is because before this, I had a colorless Eldrazi deck. It's helmed by Emrakul, the Promised End. But there was a lot of Eldrazi's, a lot of the colored Eldrazi's that I wanted to include, and I couldn't. But now they have a place. So Ulalek Fused Atrocity. We've got a couple of Planeswalkers in this deck. We have Ugin the Ineffable. This is a must in an Eldrazi deck because of the static ability. Colorless spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, all right? One of the problems with Eldrazi is they have massive casting costs. So when you're building a deck, you have to have a lot of lands, you have to have a lot of mana ramp, and you have to figure out all kinds of ways to reduce the casting costs. So Ugin really, really works. His +1 ability, exile the top card of your library face down and look at it. Create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token. When that token leaves the battlefield, put that exiled card into your hand. And then the -3 ability, destroy target permanent that's 1 or more colors. And a card that just came out in Tarkir Dragonstorm, Ugin, Eye of the Storms. The static ability, when you cast this spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. And whenever you cast a colorless spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. The +2 ability, you gain 3 life and draw a card. The 0 ability, you add 3 colorless mana. So the beauty of this card, it acts as mana ramp. And then the final ability, search your library for any number of colorless non-land cards, exile them, then shuffle. Until end of turn, you may cast those cards without paying their mana cost. This is a definite game ender in an Eldrazi deck. Those are my commanders. Now let's talk creatures. And the first one up is the Mutated Cultist. All right? Devoid. When you cast this spell, remove all counters from up to 1 target permanent or opponent. The next spell you cast this turn costs 1 less to cast for each counter removed this way. Death Touch. You might be asking, Bobby, why is this card in your deck? Is this any good? And the answer is absolutely yes. Just look at this for a second. Will I get another card out and see if you can figure this out? So say you have Dark Depths up, and it's got 10 of the counters on it. Read Dark Depths for a minute. Dark Depths enters the battlefield with 10 ice counters on it. You remove an ice counter from Dark Depths by paying 3 colorless mana, and when Dark Depths has no ice counters on it, sacrifice it. If you do, put a legendary 2020 black avatar creature token with flying indestructible named Merit Lage onto the battlefield. So it comes out with 10 tokens, or 10 counters on it, if you will. And then Mutated Cultist comes out. When you cast this spell, remove all counters from up to one target permanent or opponent. From the next spell you cast this turn, costs one less to cast for each counter removed this way. So this has 10 counters. You cast this, you take 10 counters off of this, which means immediately Merit Lage is into play. You've got that 20/20 indestructible creature. And then you can use it to cast something like a Kozilek, the Butcher of Truth, which costs 10 mana. When you cast this spell, draw 4 cards, Annihilator 4. And when Kozilek, the Butcher of Truth, is put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles it into their library. So there is a chance, if you were to draw a good hand and you were to have this land on the battlefield and you casted this on, say, turn 2 or 3, you could bring out a Kozilek. So incredible combo there with the Mutated Cultist. All right, I absolutely love that one, and it works with a lot of cards in this deck. We have some mana ramp. The Ignoble Hierarch. I absolutely love this card for mana ramp. You add a black, a red, or a green mana. We have the Ornithopter of Paradise. More mana ramp. Flying at 1 mana of any color. We have the Snapping Voidcraw. It's got the void. That means this card has no color. You can add 2 mana to your mana pool, or you could pay some and you could draw a card. But again, mana ramp. Speaking of mana ramp, we have the Delighted Halfling, another mana ramp card. You add 1 colorless, or you can tap it and add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a legendary spell, and that spell cannot be countered. I know I've got some other mana ramp in this deck, and I kind of would like to go over that first. Birds of Paradise, maybe the best mana dork of all time, flying and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. We have the Noble Hierarch. It's got Exalted. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. But look at this mana ramp here, a green, a white, or a blue, and it only costs 1 mana to bring out. And then we have the Bloom Tender. This is a great mana ramp card for a card with 5 colors. For each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. So look at this already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana ramp cards, and I could actually kind of include that because of those combos, so 8, but at the very least, we have 7. Now, one of the things when I build decks, if I've got a high mana value, now mana value is the total amount of all the mana symbols on the cards put together. So you see, this is a 2, this is a 1, this is a 3, all right? So overall, we have a mana value of 6. The total mana value of this deck is higher than I want it to be. It's 257, I believe. I've got my Mox Build open right here. By the way, there will be the Mox Build link to the deck list in the show notes. Yes, it's 257. Normally, when I'm trying to build competitive decks, I like that mana value to be under 200. But obviously, with things like Kozilek, the Butcher of Truth, which we talked about, that's at 10. And you know all the other big Eldrazi Titans are in here. It has a massive mana value, this deck. So one of the ways I fix for that is if I do have a mana value that's going to go over 200, like well over 200, I include a bunch of extra mana ramp and I include some extra land. So that's the deal with the Eldrazi deck. Well, let's continue with the creatures. We have the Endless One. Casting cost is X. When Endless One enters the battlefield, it enters it with X 1/1 counters on it. Love that card. The Sowing Mica Spawn, Devoid, Kicker. Whenever you cast this spell, search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. When you cast this spell, if it was kicked, exile target land, all right? So it can act as land removal, but it allows me to search for a land card. So maybe I can go get that Dark Depths, all right? Emrakul, the Eon's Torn, all right, banned card. But if you know anything about me, I play with banned cards. This is how I feature my collection, number 1. I'm not going to not include Emrakul, the Eon's Torn. He is the ultimate Eldrazi. So this has to go in this deck, banned list or not. And my pod plays with banned cards. So Emrakul, the Eon's Torn, hello. Emrakul, the Eon's Torn can't be countered. When you cast Emrakul, take an extra turn after this one. Flying, protection from colored spells, Annihilator 6. And when it's put into a graveyard, you shuffle it into your library. This card is an absolute, it's a game ender. But I do think it should be unbanned. So free Emrakul. Actually, unban everything now that we're talking about it. All right. Another card we have here. We have Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Another great Eldrazi Titan. It costs 10 to cast. You can use that with that mutated cultist Dark Depths combo. When you cast this spell, exile 2 target permanents, indestructible. Whenever Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger attacks, defending player exiles the top 20 cards of their library. We have the Eldrazi Displacer. All right, it's got Devoid, and exile another target creature, then return it to the battlefield, tapped under its owner's control. That is a great thing to use with one of the Eldrazi Titans to get that effect for when you cast this spell, right? So you can get, say, that exile 2 target permanents again. So I use the Eldrazi Displacer with a lot of these Titans. We have the Glaring Flesh Raker. Whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature jungle with sacrifice this creature, add a colorless mana. And whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, Glaring Flesh Raker deals 1 damage to each opponent. Another form of mana ramp in this deck. Azlask the Swelling Scourge. All right. When Azlask the Swelling Scourge or another colorless creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. You pay 5 mana, a white, a blue, a black, a red, a green. Creatures you control get +X until the end of turn, where X is the number of experience counters you have on number of experience counters you have. Scions and spawns you control gain indestructible Annihilator 1 until the end of turn. Another Emrakul. I told you we had all the Titans in here. The World Anew. When you cast this spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. Flying, protection from spells, protection from permanents that were cast this turn. When Emrakul, the World Anew, leaves the battlefield, sacrifice all creatures you control. The madness cost is pay 6, right? It that heralds the end, low casting cost Eldrazi. Colorless spells you cast with mana value 7 or greater cost 1 less to cast. Remember I said all kinds of cost reducers were in this deck? Well, this is one of them. And all colorless creatures I have get +1/+1. Vampire Hexmage. What's a Vampire Hexmage doing in your Eldrazi deck? Well, it works with the Dark Depths, so I had to put it in. I want to maximize that combo. It's one of my favorite ways to win the game. We've got Emrakul, the Promised End, commander of my colorless Eldrazi deck. But Emrakul, the Promised End, costs 1 less to cast for each card among cards in your graveyard. And when you cast Emrakul, you gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. After that turn, that player takes an extra turn. I actually think this Emrakul, and this may be a hot take, I actually think this Emrakul is more powerful than the Eon's Torn. It's one of my arguments for unbanning the Eon's Torn. Emrakul, the Promised End, one of my favorite cards of all time. Another Titan, Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre. When you cast this spell, destroy target permanents for more, target removal. Indestructible. Annihilator 4. And again, when it's put into the graveyard, you shuffle it into your library. The Thought-Knot Seer, one of my favorite cards of all time. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it and exile that card. And when it leaves the battlefield, target opponent draws a card. The Null Drifter. From Modern Horizons 3, when you cast a spell, draw 2 cards. Flying, Annihilator 1, and it's got Evoke on it. Braids Conjurer Adept. Now, this card is dangerous, but I love it. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may put an artifact, creature, or land card from their hand onto the battlefield. Listen, I don't put this in a lot of decks, but in Eldrazi, I will always have the bigger, tougher, more powerful creatures. I mean, maybe I'm playing against an Eldrazi deck, and it's like even Steven kind of deal, but no one is going to have better creatures than my Eldrazi. So this card had to go in this deck. We have these two in tandem, Gisela and Bruna. All right. So Gisela first, flying, first strike, lifelink, and at the beginning of your end step, if you own both Gisela and Bruna, then you can meld them into a creature, Bracella, Voice of Nightmares. And then Bruna the Fading Light. When you cast Bruna the Fading Light, you may return target angel or human creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That doesn't matter for this deck. But what does matter, the reason I put them in, is because look at this beautiful, radiant, glorious Eldrazi angel. All right, it's a 9/10 flying. First strike, vigilance, lifelink. Your opponents can't cast spells with converted mana cost 3 or less. One of my favorite all-time Eldrazi creatures. And so you know that had to go in this deck. And then one more card from the Foundation set, and it's one of my favorite Eldrazi's. And the minute I got it, I put it in this deck. The Sire of 7 Deaths, all right? The Sire of 7 Deaths. First strike, vigilance, menace, trample. I mean, that's an incredible combination. reach, and lifelink, and the ward pays 7 life. All right, so it's a 7/7 creature, the sire of 7 deaths. All in all, there are 27 creatures in this Eldrazi deck. Let's talk about the enchantments. We have the Echoes of Eternity. The triggered ability of a colorless spell you control or another colorless permanent you control triggers. That ability triggers an additional time. Great for those Titans. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Sneak Attack, a way to get my Eldrazi Titans out early. Choose a creature card from your hand, put it into play. Creature is unaffected by summoning sickness. At the end of turn, sacrifice a creature. Works great with the Eldrazi Titans. Kozilek's Unsealing. Devoid. And whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4, 5, or 6, create 2/0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens with sacrifice this creature and out of colorless mana. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, draw 3 cards. The Awakening Zone. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature again, okay? So some mana ramp. Omniscience. You may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana costs. Again, a way to cheat out those Eldrazi's. And another thing that I do, I know I mentioned the mana ramp, all right, and the extra lands when I have a high mana value deck, but when I have a high mana value deck, it probably means I have a lot of really, really high casting cost creatures like the Eldrazi Titans. I will include a lot of those cards to cheat out creatures. So Omniscience, all right, we got Sneak Attack, we have that Braids card. They really, really, really help. And then we have the Eldrazi's Conscription. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +10/+10. It has Trample and Annihilator 2. And then 1 with the Multiverse, all right? You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play and cast spells from the top of your library. Once during each of your turn, you may cast a spell from your hand or the top of your library without paying its mana cost. High casting cost, but again, a way to cheat out a lot of big creatures, all right? Now for the instance, and we have Kozilek's Command. Choose 2. Target player creates X/0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens. Target player scries X and draws a card. Exile target creature with mana value X or less. Exile up to X target creature from graveyards. Check this guy out. Show and Tell. Another way to cheat out something. Each player may put an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land card from his or her hand onto the battlefield. Oftentimes, I will use that with this one with the Multiverse. If I can get that out, it means I'm casting a free Eldrazi every turn. So I love Show and Tell. Ugin's Binding. Devoid. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Whenever you cast a colorless spell with mana value 7 or greater, you may exile Ugin's Binding from your graveyard. When you do, return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Eldrazi Confluence. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Target creature gets +3/+3 until the end of turn. Exile target non-land permanent, then return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. And then you create a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature, all right? Null Elemental Blast. Choose 1, counter target multicolored spell, destroy target multicolored permanent. And Eldritch Immunity. Target creature you control gains protection from each color until the end of turn. And it's got an overload cost. So some instance, we're a little low on sorceries, an instance in this deck. A lot of times I use a lot of removal and I use a lot of counter spells in my deck to make them more competitive. This deck, I just didn't do it. One, I wanted to feature all my Eldrazi collectability first, all right? I'm not just doing like building decks to win. I like to feature all the Eldrazi. I like to show off my collection in my decks. But when you talk about removal, a bunch of my creatures have Annihilator. A bunch of my creatures get rid of target other creatures. And so I figured I would have enough. The goal of this deck is to just run people over and overwhelm them, not necessarily try to counter them, all right? So that's why. If you're wondering, Bobby, why are you playing more removal? Why are you playing more counter spells? That is why. Now let's talk about artifacts. We have Urza's Incubator, one of the best cost reducers in Magic for kinfolk type groups. We have Cryptolith Fragment, all right? Cryptolith Fragment enters the battlefield tapped. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Each player loses a life. At the beginning of your upkeep, if each player has 10 or less life, you can transform this, all right? So usually you'll get this at the end of the game. I shouldn't say usually. That's the only chance to really get it. Flying Death Touch. Whenever Aurora of Emrakul attacks, each opponent loses 3 life, all right? It's kind of cool little enchantment here. It acts as some mana ramp, and it might be something that can help you win the game later on. Chromatic Lantern. More mana ramp. Dynamo, more mana ramp. Timeless Lotus, more mana ramp. Did I mention how much mana ramp was in this deck? You need it with the Eldrazi. Forsaken Monument. Colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. Whenever you tap a permanent for a mana, add another mana, so some more mana ramp. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, gain 2 life. Jeweled Lotus, yes, ban card, but it needs to be unbanned. Let's have a serious talk. This needs to be unbanned now. In fact, I am in favor of unbanning every single card in the Magic the Gathering universe, so Jeweled Lotus has a place in my deck. And it allows you to play the bigger commanders. Free Jeweled Lotus. Soul Ring, the best mana ramp card of all time. Herald's Horn, a cost reducer, all right? Really good for Kinfolk type decks. I would strongly recommend that card. Thought Vessel, more mana ramp, all right? We are up to like 15 or 16 mana ramp cards in this deck to help it go. The Quicksilver Amulet, a way to cheat out creatures. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Arcane Signet, another piece of mana ramp in a 5-color deck. It is incredible. It's almost as good as a Soul Ring. The Relic of Sauron, more mana ramp. Commander's Spear, more mana ramp. Idol of the False Gods. Create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token. All right, whenever an Eldrazi you control dies, put a 1/1 counter on it. As long as it has 8 or more 1/1 counters on it, it's a 0/0 creature in addition to its other types and has Annihilator 2. Mana ramp, mana ramp, mana ramp, mana ramp, and creature ramp. Patchwork Banner. All right, we have a ton of mana ramp cards. I mean, in the artifacts alone, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd probably count that. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I mean, we're not even talking about the creatures right here. There's a bunch of cost reducers. So yeah, a great way to build up a big Eldrazi deck. If you're going to build an Eldrazi deck, I would strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you put a lot of mana ramp in the deck. The final thing we have to talk about is lands, and there are 38 lands in this deck. Normally, if you follow me, you know I use 36. 36 is kind of my magic number. If the mana value of the deck is 200 or under, it starts to go over that. Yeah, we added some lands and all the mana ramp stuff. We have a bunch of basic lands in here, some forests, plains, island, plains, swamp, island, mountain. And then we have the special lands, right? The non-basics. We already talked about the dark decks and the combos that unleash that in this deck. Another combo, and I'm looking for the card that goes kind of twinsies with this. Thespian Stage, all right? It's a way to cheat out the dark depths, if you will. You add 1 colorless mana, Thespian Stage becomes a copy of target land, except it has this ability, so it will copy this land. You don't get the counters on it. You can unleash Merit Lage right away. So the Thespian Stage, great combo. Didn't know if you know about that one, but Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, old school combo. The Open Palace, we have a Blooming Marsh. We have a Willow Rush Verge. I love these lands, by the way, from Ether Drift. Undergrowth Stadium. The Spire of Industry. Urza's Cave, one of the best lands ever, in my opinion, to go fishing for your Gaia's Cradle, your Tolarian Academy. Those aren't in here, but I could fish for that Dark Depths, or if I had the Dark Depths out with a bunch of counters on it, I could fish for a Thespian Stage. Urza's Tower, and that goes along with a lot of the Urza's lands, right? We have an Urza's Workshop. We have an Urza's Mine. We have an Urza's Power Plant. So a way to get a bunch of extra colorless mana out, all right? We have the Talon Gates of Madeira. We have the Exotic Orchard. We have the Temple Garden, these Zendikar Expeditions, the Overgrand Tomb, Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. Look at this. Add 1 to your mana pool, and you gain 1 life for each colorless creature you control. Vault of Champions, a Savannah. There's a random dual land thrown in here. The Eldrazi Temple, necessary for the Eldrazi. Add 1 colorless mana, and then you add 2 colorless mana to cast Eldrazi spells. Love this one here, another cost reducer, the Eye of Ugin. Colorless Eldrazi spells cost you 2 less to cast. Search your library for a colorless creature card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Love that ability. We have Spawning Bed. We have Command Tower. We have Submerged Boneyard. We have the Undercity Sewers, all right, with Surveil 1. Murders of Carla Manor is a completely underrated set, by the way. It's worth it to purchase those just for these lands. The Underground River, Pathway Land, Craig Crown Pathway, Morphic Pool, Luxury Suite, and the City of Brass. All in all, 38 lands. The total mana value of this deck, again, is 257, which is a lot more than my normal 200. Oftentimes I say to make a deck competitive, you have to have it under 200. Not the case with this Eldrazi deck. This Eldrazi deck is one of my most competitive decks. And yes, it does have that higher casting cost, despite what I've told you. But we have the extra lands. We have an absolutely metric ton of mana ramp in this deck. And so this deck goes really well. It goes really, really hard. And this Ulalek deck is one of my favorite decks to play. Overall, the bracket for this is counted as bracket 2. It doesn't play like a bracket 2 deck at all. I do have a couple of those banned cards. I have a jeweled Lotus in here. I would like to put a mana crypt in here, but I did not have any extra ones. All right. Embercold Eon's Torn is also banned. If I was going to change this deck a little bit, I could take the jeweled Lotus out. Maybe I'd put a Chrome Mox in its place or a Mox Opal for Embercold the Eon's Torn. I mean, it's really, really hard to replace that Titan, but I would put something in its place. Maybe a big artifact creature, maybe a Blightsteel Colossus. That would be a great trade for Embercold the Eon's Torn. I love the Blightsteel Colossus, and the deck would work pretty much the same way. So for a bracket 2, this goes really, really hard. And that's one of my problems with the bracket system. I've talked a little bit about this on my podcast, but this does not adhere to the spirit of the bracket system, right? Like this is a 2 because there's not a lot of game changers in it, but it absolutely crushes this deck. So if you want like the best bracket 2 deck ever, go with Eldrazi. And thank you for coming by and let me show off my deck. Now, I do have an ask for you. It's important. Building decks, tinkering with decks is my absolute favorite thing in the world to do. When I'm feeling stressed due to the demands of my job, family, other stuff going on in my life, when I'm not doing jiu-jitsu, like I am down here in my lab, I am working with my magic cards. You can always see I'm working on decks. I'm actually working on a Planeswalker themed deck right now, all right, with the Prismatic Bridge as the commander, but I'm always working on my decks. And I love advice. So please go to the comments and tell me how you would improve this Eldrazi deck, what you would add to it. I always learn. And a lot of times when you go to check the deck list in the show notes, you'll notice changes to it, because when people do make suggestions, I will a lot of the time fix my deck. Shouldn't say fix it, switch it, add some things. Like there's a lot of cards I've never heard of and a lot of things I forget about, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, that card, that's got to go in here. So please make your suggestions, subscribe, and I really hope you enjoy these videos as much as I enjoy filming them. This is, like I said, no proxies, no graphics. I'm not putting together the ultimate deck. This is actually my real collection. I'm well over 50 commander decks right now. They all live and breathe in existence at the same time. Here's another one I've been working on, the Well of Tears. It's a Grand Arbiter Augustine deck, but all these decks actually exist in real time. You can find them all on my Moxville, but I am all about collecting and sharing my joy of this fabulous game with the world. So thank you for coming by, and I'll see you for the next episode of Muscles and Magic the Gathering.